I was just up there yesterday.
Oh, are we on public already?
All right, let us come to order. I think first we need to approve the agenda. If we could get that screen up. So does anyone have any additions, corrections, or amendments to the agenda? Motion to approve?
Approved.
So motion?
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, agenda is approved. We don't have a whole lot of public comment.
But I have oral communication.
Oh, you do? All right.
Yeah. First of all, for anybody who's listening, come on Saturday. We have a planting day in Costañas Canyon, February 3rd. What time is it start at 9 or 10?
10.
10 to 1.
Yeah.
Yeah. No T-shirt. I mean, no free
Doing
T-shirt.
gloves or something this year, right?
But come anyway, because it's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
It's better than pulling. Planting is better than pulling. And the second item is we still have open spaces on the Open Space and Ecology Committee, and also on the other commissions and committees. So get your applications in. You still have another hour and 20 minutes. Applications are available at City Hall, and they're open.
Thanks, Michelle.
Communications, done.
All right, first item of business, and we have Michael Roush here, attorney, to talk to us about protection of open space in the Brisbane Acres. And everybody got in their packet 2 documents referring to that. And so could we have those memos put up on the screen? Everybody have a chance to look those over?
Yeah, good.
Okay. Barbara had some amendments or suggested amendments to the City Council's memo on this, so should we look at those next?
Well, do we want to have, for the benefit of the public who hasn't received the packet, do we want to have
Quick
go over
reading.
the protection as open space of city-owned, go over the memo?
Yeah, maybe we should do that.
I was going to
Did we ever get a map, or I thought was missing from the packet, wasn't it?
Yeah, I didn't get a map.
we have a copy of the map we can put up, and I was going to suggest that the city attorney give us a little background on when he took this to council and what the direction was.
Do we
Yeah.
want to do that first?
Yeah.
All right, let's do that.
Sure.
Thank you for coming.
Chair and members of the committee, thank you for having me at tonight's meeting. Glad to be giving you an update in terms of the issues concerning restricting the uses of properties within Brisbane Acres that the city owns. This matter was before this committee about a year, well, maybe over a year ago, which we discussed the various methodologies by which those properties could be restricted further. That memo at that time discussed options such as conservation easements, a dedication of land to a public trust or to a local agency like the county, a declaration of restrictions, and similar types of restrictions. The committee listened to this, indicated they wanted to take the matter forward to the City Council, which we did earlier this year, laid out those options for the City Council, and after some discussion and deliberation, the Council thought that a declaration of restrictions might be the best way to go, and as a consequence of that, indicated that that it should take its thoughts back to this committee for its further input before the council made a final decision with respect to the methodologies that would be applied. Just by way of history, the city does own roughly 44 parcels within the Brisbane Acres, and of those, a number of them have been purchased through federal or state funding, and as a result of that, those have very restrictive covenants already attached to them. And in order to remove those restrictive covenants concerning open space or habitat, it would take action not only on behalf of the City Council to do away with that, but also the state and/or the federal government. So the likelihood of those restrictions being removed is very remote. However, the city did purchase other parcels within the Brisbane Acres that do not have those restrictions, and therefore, technically, the city council could decide to sell those parcels off without any restrictions at all. And I think that was probably the impetus for this committee to think that perhaps there ought to be something additional in place that the city could impose so that there would be additional restrictions on the use of that property other than open space or habitat. So as a consequence of that, I put together a declaration of restrictions, kind of like what you might see with respect to covenants, conditions, and restrictions that a developer would put on a development before the developer starts selling off lots, so that anybody who buys the lots would know of those restrictive covenants. By recording the declaration of restrictions, in the event that someone were interested in buying one of those parcels, he or she would know that those that the uses of the property be very limited, and so even if the city decided to sell any of those parcels, there would be restrictive covenants on that. Of course, like any other document, such as a declaration of restrictions, those restrictions could be removed by the city council because the city council imposed those, but I think the reality of it is that politically it would be very, very difficult for a city council to do that, but can't completely discount the fact that that could happen. As a consequence, before you tonight is a proposed declaration of restrictions, form of that and substance of it that you've had a chance to look at, and would like to take forward the committee's recommendation to the council concerning the declaration of restrictions or any other suggestions the committee might have. Be glad to answer any questions.
I have a question. May I ask why the council thought this would be the best method as opposed to, say, a land trust?
You know, there was not a lot of discussion by the council concerning that. I think that the council felt that all of the various methodologies, whether conservation easement or conveyance to a land trust or to a county, involved costs that the declaration of restrictions did not. For example, if you did a conservation easement or if you did a conveyance to a land trust, the holder of the easement or the holder of that trust would have certain fiduciary obligations to make sure the property remained in habitat and open space, and as a result of that, my experience, those kinds of agencies or those kinds of organizations would want some kind of like a trust fund set up so that they knew that there would be money available for them to carry out their fiduciary responsibilities. So my sense of it is the council felt that given the political reality of not having these properties used for anything other than open space or habitat, that the declaration of restrictions would put on, would have something recorded against the property, but would not really cost the city any money on an ongoing basis.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else got questions?
Do we know what the split, in general, not specifically of, you mentioned that there were 29 properties that were bought with state or federal grants. Do you know how many fall into each category or both, roughly?
Yes, it appears that there are, I believe there, of the 44, 29 were purchased with city funds, and the remaining 15 were with state or federal funds.
Ah, okay. I thought it sounded from the earlier.
I believe I have the math correct on that. Let me just double check here.
Can you go back to the previous page? I think it said it in the thing.
I apologize. 29 were actually acquired by federal or state funds,
Right.
and 15 were not. I apologize.
No, and so that gets to the nature of my question. No problem with that. Out of those 29, do we know what the split between federal and state are, roughly? Or a mixture of the two, I guess, would also be a possibility. And I just wonder because current state and federal sort of regimes have a different outlook on conservation matters.
Fair enough. The map that I'm looking at just does not distinguish between state or federal funding.
Okay.
My recollection is most of it has come from state funding.
Okay.
But I think there are a few that came from federal funding, probably further back in time.
Okay, all right, cool. Yeah.
The deeds, I think, for each lot or each parcel is available, because I know that the city provided that information to Mountain Watch.
Yeah.
So if you really want to know, you could go
I'm
through
just,
those.
no, not that.
Curious.
I'm just partially curious.
It's a good point, though. I couldn't
Yeah.
figure out initially why you were asking that question, but yeah, it's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
And because in theory, on some of those lots that were like where the Coastal Commission helped to purchase them, the city could in fact pay back the amount that was contributed by the Coastal Commission, and then in turn own the lot and sell it. That was part of the reason for these kinds of restrictions.
Yep. And so would this declaration cover all lots, including the ones that were state and federal, or just the purely city-owned ones?
Well, originally I was thinking that because of the restrictions that were on the land that was acquired through federal or state,
Yeah.
it seemed like having the declaration of restrictions on that would be belts, suspenders, and whatever else you could use to hold up your pants.
Right.
But now that the issue, that you've raised the issue, it isn't going to hurt
Yeah.
to put the declaration on all the city-owned properties, regardless of where the funding came from.
Okay, cool. And what about any properties that are purchased subsequent to the declaration? Would there be any provision for adding more to that, or?
Certainly, what would happen is, as a practical matter, that the declaration would be amended in the future to add any additional properties, and it would, when we obtained those parcels, the declaration would be, there'd be a reference to that declaration to make it clear that those parcels were also subject to that declaration of restrictions.
Cool.
And is it just limited to property that is in the acres?
Well, this declaration is intended to cover the property that's currently within the Brisbane acres, that is within the what's it called? The priority preservation area. That's currently what's in play right now.
Okay.
Was there some other area you were thinking of? Or are you talking about adding?
Well, I still feel very upset about the public land and public access that we lost when we sold the property to the bakery.
Yeah.
So I just didn't know if this would be a way to also protect. Obviously, we'd probably have to do a separate one for that type of property to make sure that we protected the other areas that are designated as open space, in the city, like the trails, the rails to trails and stuff like that. But I guess that's sort of a separate issue, so maybe we should get this one done and then work on that one. But with this type of thing, with this type of declaration of restriction work for protecting that type of land as well, Michael?
It certainly could, although, again, typically these restrictions go with identified, parcels, whether it's lot block or meets and bounds, et cetera, et cetera. I guess I would need to understand a little more about the area you're talking about, but if we have a legal description that would go along with it, the answer is yes. You could, you can add whatever parcels you want to if you have a legal lot description.
Uh-huh. Because the area that I'm concerned about, I mean, there's numerous areas I'm concerned about, but the one that comes to mind, of course, is the Crocker Trail that goes around through Crocker Industrial Park.
But isn't that is that an easement right now, or is the city owned that in fee currently?
I believe we own it in fee because we turned around and sold a piece of it.
Okay. Well, if we have a legal description, the answer is yes.
Okay.
I just wasn't sure exactly whether, the city simply had a right-of-way on it or how it was held in title.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure it's held in title, but I'm pretty sure the city of Brisbane owns it, yeah.
I think she's right. I think that's my understanding as well. So, but we would need to check.
Yeah. I think we should put that on the future agenda.
And on what you're looking at now is the properties within the preservation area, and the ones outlined in green are the one the city owns, and the ones that are not in green are the ones that are still in private hands.
Right.
And then would this if we acquired any of those that are in private, would this apply? Could this apply, or would it apply?
Yes, the idea would be that when we acquired that, there would be a rider to those deeds that would make reference to this declaration, which will be recorded, making those parcels subject to the declaration as well.
May I ask, how would that function come about? Would it be automatic, or would it be something that council would need to act upon, or?
Well, it would be part of the acquisition documents, so the answer is yes, that the council would, in acquiring that, would would sort of go along with the declaration. I guess if you're asking, is it automatic? The answer is, as a practical matter, no, it's not self-executing.
Okay.
But as a practical matter, the property would be purchased subject to this declaration.
Okay, that answers my question. Thank you.
So at this point, 59, 58, 96, and 70 can still do what they would like.
They're still private property.
They're still
Yeah.
private property.
As well as all the other ones on
That
the
I
east-
see that.
As all the ones on the east end.
36, and then,
Well, and there's zoning regulations with respect to what could be developed up there, but there aren't any other, they are free to develop, assuming that they can meet the zoning
Other
and other types of regulatory requirements.
Yeah,
Michelle?
but as we know, those fall by the wayside pretty easily with
Yeah.
state pressure.
Do you know about lot 89 on the map there? That one has like fresh tractor tracks on it. I was wondering, I thought it might have been for sale recently. You know about that one?
I don't know. I think that might be the one that got sold. There was one that got sold for like $350,000 or $400,000
Couple, yeah, like last year, right?
last year. Yeah.
Like up on, oh yeah. Yeah, we might be getting one there.
Yeah, there are a few properties that are off of the private road up to Margaret Tank. Because Margaret Tank is number, I can't read it, 60.
Right above 90?
Yes.
Yeah, 90 and 91. 91 went for sale a while back, but didn't sell, right?
I don't know.
Yeah.
And then there are two that are identified as water department properties, and they were probably prior to incorporation, but we're going to preserve those for Margaret Tank, and there's one at the top of the acres that would be water usage sites, so that's different than open space. So we wouldn't record a declaration of restrictions on them, but they're preserved for water use.
Okay. But we still maintain the habitat on those anyway.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, any other questions from the committee?
Not at this time.
Nope.
nope.
Okay, so maybe now we should look at, yeah. And this is the one that shows Barbara's edits. Proposed edits.
Mm-hmm.
That would be intent, not intend.
The intent to preserve.
Yeah.
To be clear, the text in red that is strike through is the original text from Michael that was suggested to be removed, and the red text that is not strike through is Barbara's addition.
Okay.
I don't have any objection to that.
I think the second word where it says intend, shouldn't it be intent?
Intent.
Should it be
Yeah.
That, yeah.
Yeah,
Typo.
sorry.
I guess my question on the recital C, I wasn't quite sure what the additional language added that wasn't already there. So perhaps the committee member could elaborate on that for my benefit.
So the original read, the city that such property, like any other property acquired with state or federal funds, I wanted to include not just the properties we bought with state and federal funds, but the ones that the city had bought with their own money.
But as originally written, it is inclusive as I read it.
Okay, I didn't read it as inclusive, but maybe,
That the city may acquire in the future, city intends that such property, like the other property acquired with federal or state
That's
funds.
B.
okay.
Maybe, maybe where it says like the other property acquired with city, federal, or state funds.
If the intent there is to make sure that all of the properties that the city has purchased, whether with city funds, state funds, or any other funds,
Right.
I'll clean that language up to include that. I may have to wordsmith that a little bit, but if
Sure.
that's the intent, I
Perfect.
assume the committee doesn't have an issue with that.
Yeah. And then,
No, it's inclusive, but if you could clarify that it is.
Sure, no,
would
that's
be
no
great.
problem. I understand the point better now, and I can clarify that.
and the other thing is intends, well, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. I hate to use that cliche.
I can get a better verb there.
Okay, thank you, Michael.
More poignant one.
And I think the other change then had to do with having the, taking the, if the amendment was, excuse me, the declaration was going to be amended or revised, to take it to a vote of the people. And I guess I have two issues with that. Number one, there could be a cost to have the election. That would be one factor. And then secondly, is that going to be, would the council view that, if that's the committee's recommendation, as indicating a concern that this council or a future council would sort of overcome the will of the community to do that? And I guess I wasn't not convinced that would be the case, that political pressure not to, make amendments. So I just would ask you to maybe consider whether you really need that in order to get the comfort level that you want.
Well, when we discussed this, we certainly, I don't think, have any concerns about our current city council, but we did, when we discussed this as a committee, have some concerns about a potentially less concerned future council. So perhaps majority of voters is not the correct instrument, but I did think that our purpose in this declaration was kind of to preserve it in perpetuity, no matter what the political winds came or went.
Would a
So
super-
maybe a voters is not a better.
Well, would a supermajority of the council give you better satisfaction?
That would give me better satisfaction.
So what's the difference between a supermajority and a
Be
majority?
4 out of 5 rather than 3 out of 5.
Yeah.
That sounds a little bit better, yeah.
Or we could ask for unanimous, but, and make it damn hard for anybody to do anything other than continue forward.
But you know what? Here's the thing, is that
Yeah.
I've seen things go down unanimously when not all of the council members agreed,
Yeah, that's true.
just because they try to stick together on certain issues.
Mm-hmm.
Super's probably fine, no?
I'm comfortable with super. I mean,
I am too.
It's better than just the majority of the
Yes.
council, yeah.
it's ultimately up to the city council to approve the verbiage, so.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think unanimous would be even a little, I mean, I understand what you're saying, Michelle. I've seen that too, but I still think even a unanimous vote would be a little stronger than a supermajority. So it's all a question of what we want to ask for.
And what do you think we can get? Do you think they would, I mean, is it going to matter? Is it going to be difficult to get it signed?
Council's certainly going to, give great weight to this committee's recommendation. I'm just trying to think of it, kind of practically, and a supermajority is difficult to obtain. I mean, just in the nature of things. And if in my recollection or my experience has been, if you put a supermajority, it takes a lot to get to that rather than just the majority. So if you feel something more than majority is required, I would suggest supermajority over unanimous or going to the vote, but it's your call on.
Any particular reason you'd want to go for a supermajority over a unanimous?
Well, I think I'm trying to think through that whether or not if you have one person who wants to hold out for some reason, would that defeat the intent of the rest of the council members? I'm trying to think through if that's going to, it often happens with respect to, let's say you're going to have in certain jurisdictions under their charter, it takes a 4/5 vote to sell property, for example, and 4/5 of the council. And therefore, if you end up having one council member who is just, say, opposed to it on principle, then another council member sort of has undue leverage to kind of bargain for that person's vote in order to get to 4. So I'm just, trying to think through if you make it unanimous, it just seems like it puts. It seems like it defeats the whole idea of a majority vote on a particular item, and now you're creating a supermajority, and it just seems like it goes kind of sideways on sort of a democratic process. But that's, I'm not sure I'm articulating
So in
as
plain
well as I
speak,
could.
you could
but-
have a curmudgeon who didn't want to go along with it, and it would take 4, and it could hold up something that was really important to go ahead and do.
Yeah, if it take a unanimous to set it aside, or no, yeah. I'm just thinking perhaps, I'm trying to
Okay.
think of a situation where, there would be compelling reasons to want to remove the restriction. And if you had a unanimous vote, then one person could hold off or could hold up something that maybe the community really wanted it to occur.
Yeah.
Here's a thought here. So what if we said a supermajority to amend and unanimous to revoke? Because
So-
I think, there might be potentially times where this would need to be amended, but to revoke it outright and to take away the protections, I feel like, I don't know if I see a circumstance under that which I would approve.
Well, you could amend the protections to make them effectively useless.
I suppose,
So,
that's true.
But, talking about that example of having one curmudgeon holdout, and this just came off the top of my head, what if we had like a land transfer between the state, the county, and the city, and things were getting shuffled around a little bit, maybe to make way for a better, more sustainable growth pattern or whatever, and you had somebody who was just on principle, no, I will never let that happen. And meanwhile, you have a majority of the city that says, well, this will all be in our benefit, and we'll have new parks or new schools or whatever it is. And you have one person who just on principle says, no, I will not remove that, and they can bring that entire thing to a halt. Whereas if you have 5 people and you only need to get to 4, then that person would have to convince one other person to hold out with them.
Absolutely, but it could just as equally go the other way. We could have, in this hypothetical future, 4 greedy council members and 1 honest one. So we don't know what's going to happen in the future. We have to decide what we're comfortable with.
Well, yeah, but remember those council members would have been elected by the population. Just
Well,
so.
And yet, what
Yes.
we're doing here
And
is
yet.
trying to preserve these in perpetuity.
yes.
Yeah,
So-
no, I get it.
Perpetuity.
I'm just throwing out examples of
Yeah.
imaginations. I mean, the thing that I would, in terms of the sort of the elephant in the room is what happens when a developer puts 10,000 people in the Baylands, and now the votes of the people of the city of Brisbane, as it currently exists, are effectively swamped out, and the city council make composition changes so radically because you now have a large block of people with no emotional ties to old Brisbane, as it were. And I could see that being a and then they're like, the hell with it. Let's put some McMansions up on the hill. Woo,
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll
so-
get another roller derby park or something.
yeah, exactly. So,
could happen.
So yeah, it's ultimately, I think maybe the council, because maybe the council themselves would not vote for a unanimous declaration. You know, I certainly feel more comfortable than a simple majority, like moving it upwards. But in the end, I think it would be the council that would approve whether it's a majority, a supermajority, or a
Unanimous.
unanimous.
Yeah.
Maybe we can report out that the committee discussed this to some effect and, you know, seeks their wise counsel.
Yeah. I mean, they're going to do what they're going to do, but I think I'd rather go for a unanimous.
Do you think that if we went for unanimous, that they wouldn't sign it?
I think they change
If the
it.
council disagrees with that, they will amend the language as it sees fit. So, you know, this committee should make its recommendation based on what it would like to see, and the council will give that due consideration and make its own decision.
Let's shoot for the moon. Why not? Why bargain for half a loaf and settle for 2 slices when we can start with a full loaf and get it whittled down to half a loaf?
Yeah, I think that due to the nature of what we're trying to achieve, being perpetuity, and also the location of the properties involved, I think we should ask for unanimous. I appreciate the supermajority recommendation, Michael, but that leaves us a fallback position if they don't agree with unanimous. Because it really is, the whole idea of it is to protect in perpetuity rare and endangered habitat.
And actually, this does it. That's probably the strongest way of doing it without having those fiduciary trust fund fees having to be set aside. Is, you know, this is sort of the strongest legal language that can not be undone by a future council. So if they want to do it on the cheap, this is the way to do it on the cheap.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are we all in agreement?
Yeah.
Yes.
Do we need a vote?
I'll go for that.
I would appreciate just if you would somebody make a motion to include that language, then we can carry that forward.
I make a motion to make for our Mr. I forget, is it Roush or Roush?
Roush?
Roush. To make that a change as directed by the committee
For a city council unanimous vote.
and to clean up the language around and making sure
Recital
that
C.
that's inclusive
Okay.
of all properties.
Got
I
it.
second that.
Right, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Kima.
Thank you, Barbara, for
Yeah.
suggesting the changes and starting that discussion. So
Yeah.
that's very helpful. And thank you, Michael, for coming to our meeting. And
I'm going to stay. I'm not going to leave now.
oh, good. Okay, excellent.
So much
The
fun.
exciting stuff starts now.
Okay.
No, but
Okay. All right, next is approval of the minutes. I looked them over, they're fine to me. Anybody got any changes?
Not at this time.
It's so long ago, I don't remember.
I read them again this
Motion to approve the minutes?
So motioned.
Second?
second. I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, okay.
That's why it's
Moving right along.
into a meeting, because
Yep.
Okay. Education and outreach goals. We said that we were going to talk about that at this meeting, and I would like to start the discussion and to thank Colleen Mackin, who's my neighbor, for making what I think is a really good suggestion, and that is that the Open Space Committee try energetically to promote citizen science initiatives as a way for the community to get more involved with the mountain and more involved with sustainability issues in general. And she gave to me a copy of the magazine Green Living, and there are several different citizen science initiatives mentioned on this page which might be appropriate for Brisbaneans. And what Colleen said is that she thought we might try to do an article for the Star about this. But I would like to just ask the rest of the committee what they think of this idea, and let's see if we could do a little bit of brainstorming about how to promote citizen science. I'll give you a few examples of citizen science initiatives that people can get involved in, and there are more. And the Education Committee, Subcommittee, which is Barbara and me, probably should do some searching and find some additional ones. But on this page are mentioned monitor butterfly migration, specifically monarchs, test your local waterways, observe growing plants, and this means collecting data on timing of the leafing, flowering, and fruiting of plants. And obviously it's one way to track climate change. If plants leaf out, flower earlier in the year. I was just, took a little walk up the mountain yesterday and noticed that we had viola blooming already, and it's not even the end of January, so that's
Really early.
kind of useful information.
Yeah, my almond tree's well into flowering.
Is it really? Wow. And then another interesting one is recording historical weather data. Apparently, this is because there's a lot of historical data available. It's in diaries and things like that, but computers can't read it. So they're actually asking for citizen volunteers to help transcribe information on historic weather patterns and sea ice conditions and things like that to aid scientists with climate modeling. So there's some pretty good projects, and I'm sure there are more. And we've batted around ideas about community education for a long time, and this seems like might be kind of good. So that's my little spiel.
I really like the idea of citizen science, and I think we should promote some citizen science projects. I think it'd be really good.
Yeah.
One of the ideas of education and outreach that still is percolating in my brain is the whole video shorts that we had talked about originally. The movie, the video that ended up being filmed at the Day in the Park by Gail Mallamson
2 years ago, yeah.
2 years ago. No, it was 3 years ago.
Is it that long ago?
Yeah, because it was when we still had our kiosk in the park. Didn't fulfill the vision that I had of what we should do. It was more like interviews of people, what they felt. And what I was thinking was more like these little video shorts that that citizens do.
Can do, yeah.
That we collect. Like we have a contest or we have a collection of them, and then we show them, on the, or splice them together and show them on the outreach channel of things like doing your morning recycling or doing your, what goes in what bin, or, using the charging station, or just little like 60-second videos that you can take with your iPhone. I'm not talking about hiring a videographer or a filmmaker to do a film for us. I'm talking about citizens doing films, kids doing films, science project films,
Yeah.
That type of thing.
We've actually talked about that several times, and especially in connection with students, all of whom have smartphones, and this might be a way to engage their creativity and so forth. So I think that's a fine idea, but anything more to say about citizen science? And if you like the idea, what should we do about it? I mean, we can run a STAR article, but is there any other thing that we might like to do to promote this and encourage it?
Are we going to decide on one or two of those to promote? Is that what we're looking at? Or are we looking at,
I'm
you guys are
asking
going to
you.
kind of,
We could try to promote citizen science in general, or we could try to really dive into one of these things.
What
Could I-
about having it sort of interrelate with our habitat restoration days? So we're learning about different species and invasive species, and maybe the people that participate in the habitat restoration can also,
take snippet videos?
yeah, or in some way we because we're already doing activities that are science-based, like getting rid of invasive species. So kind of something that I like the butterfly idea too. But something that kind of deals with our things we're already doing or already interested in.
So
think that's a
if
good
I
idea.
may,
Yeah.
can I jump in here just for a quick
Sure.
second? I just wanted to kind of mention from staff perspective, what we were hoping for you to discuss this evening is kind of some higher level goals and ideas to put the education and outreach subcommittee to work out the finer points of. So I would suggest probably not going into that depth of deciding specifically which citizen science initiatives you want to pursue right now, and deciding
that we
as a
do want
committee that you do want to do that, and allowing that kind of detail to be left to the subcommittee.
Oh, that's easy. Yeah, we
Yes.
can-
Yeah.
telling the subcommittee to do some stuff, that's great. That's great.
So I think that if we decide to move forward, we should start with a project, a citizen science project that we host, maybe 2 projects, and then also ask for suggestions from the public in the Star article or whatever of citizen science projects that they see would be beneficial.
Is there some kind of like list or clearinghouse or website where you can look at just all the citizen science projects that are out there begging for help?
A couple of websites are recommended that we could look
Okay.
at.
Great.
Cool.
There's one other thing that's kind of along the line of citizen science. I don't know if there's an actual project, but I just checked the California invasive plants book out of the library again just to review it. And I was thinking that one thing we might do is publicize new invaders. The book does identify several species that have the potential to be highly invasive, but are not really widespread yet. So we might get people watching for those. They go up on the mountain.
Yeah, you brought that up once before. That was
So that's another thing that we might be able to do in connection with this. Any other ideas from the committee?
Yeah, especially like you said with the new invaders, with what Kima was saying about adding that to Restoration Day, it's perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can nip them in the bud, like the oyster flower.
The thing about adding them to restoration is we would need to do some additional activities in connection with restoration because actually the reason I checked out the book was that I saw a plant up there that I hadn't seen before, and I thought, what the heck is that? And it was right on page 3 of the new invaders.
Ah,
What was
So-
it? What was it?
I forget the name of it, but it was kind of a pretty flowering plant thing. I think identifying new invasives, we'd either need to do something like add a hike to the restoration days or, put that out there for the public that does hike.
or the hikes that happen already,
Yeah.
add that to that portion, see if we can have them add the new invasives to that hike. 'Cause
Okay.
Don't they do that when they do that hike? Are they still doing that hike, right?
oh yeah.
That's
First, third-
citizens doing the hiking, right?
Pardon?
That's citizens doing the hiking, right?
Yeah.
We get them to do a little science too.
Yeah. Well, Mountain Watch is still leading the first
Yeah.
and 3rd Saturday of the month. Paul is, but
So we can
Um,
add that to that too, correct? As far as outreach education.
One other thing I would like to ask the committee about, we've talked about this in the Climate Action Planning Subcommittee, but I think some exhibits right here at City Hall and maybe some public art on climate change and sea level rise would be useful, but that would take money.
We get Kevin and Sisto.
We could what?
Get Kevin and Sisto to take pictures.
So
Pretty
sea level
thorough, yeah.
rise and what was the other thing you said?
just,
Habitat or global?
no, just climate change in general, but sea level rise seems to be the most, the sort of the clearest example of climate change that would be applicable locally. So for instance, where was I? I don't remember where I was. I think I was up in Marin, but they actually have these display things that you can look at, and they show you if sea level is going to rise as fast as they're predicting, it will be up to here, and so you can actually visualize it. And I would like to see if we could do something like that. Maybe out at the marina or with some exhibits here in City Hall. There are some sea level rise maps, but we probably have to, that are animated, but we probably have to buy another computer to display them on.
You know what would be really impactful visually
What?
is to maybe have some, maybe about 6 markers placed in different spots around with
Ooh, I'm liking
with the
this.
pole that shows, like how you go to some place that had a big flood, like the Russian River, and they have high water mark, and it's like, whoa, it was all the way up to here. Well, like put one in the community park. That's
Yeah.
a very low water table area. Put one here at City Hall. Put one out at the marina. Put one,
Quarry Road maybe or something.
or the lagoon, so that people can actually visually see. And that could be one of our projects for education and outreach, is to, install these poles and have them accurately marked of, sea level.
Definitely gives you a good visual.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's exactly the kind of thing I'm talking about, but that would take, first of all, research. You know, we'd have to get somebody who knew how
Sea level measure.
to determine that. And then we'd have to have the money to install the markers and permission to install them. So I'm just sort of throwing that out there. It's a pretty big project. Would staff like to offer any preliminary response
Maybe
to
if
that
we just
idea?
started with one in the community park.
Well,
Yeah.
I don't want to answer that specifically, but
Come on,
that-
Karen, don't
that
you
was
have
the
postal
idea.
diggers?
We do. That was the idea of this agenda item, was to have a discussion about what goals, what kind of things you want to do. And it sounds like some of, boiling it down, is some visual displays, some art, some stuff out in the community that people see, more of that. And I know we tried with the banners a couple of years ago, and it wasn't exactly what we had hoped it would be, and we were going to revisit once they were up, and we looked at them and thought about it. So we also are talking later in the agenda about the subcommittees, and boy, some of the ones are inactive and some seem repetitive, and that this education and outreach maybe start to be something that's more active. We're also going to get a couple new members, so we might see if one of them wants to join too. So I think we've got the idea that we have some stuff that's out in the community that's artistic and visual and graphic, and what would that take is something that a subcommittee could,
Yeah,
you know, with staff, get into the details of.
okay.
Yeah.
So I think we've probably got enough to go on with. Barbara and I can look at the citizen science websites and see if there's something connected to invasive species as far as citizen science is concerned.
Excellent.
There is a way to report those through the California Invasive Plant Council, so we can look into that and figure out how to publicize it. I think we're ready for the next item, unless anybody else has any.
Do we have to vote on something?
No.
Nope.
No.
Oh.
All you have to do is assign the subcommittee to work on the.
Sweet.
You like that.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay.
So our next agenda item is Earth Month outreach events, and I wanted to bring this up because in speaking with Teresa over at South San Francisco Scavenger, I learned that they are having an event on April 21st, which was a date we had targeted for our habitat restoration event on Earth Day. They are having an event from noon to 2. And so the question would be whether we want to go ahead with having an event on April 21st, or if we'd like to consider dates that would not conflict. Their event is going to be include a tour of their digester and also have trucks for kids to check out and, you know, some of those kinds of exhibits. So being that they are serving this community, it could potentially pose a conflict, but I think that's up to this committee to think about and decide, and then we would want to move forward soon with scheduling a meeting with the Parks and Rec Commission members to begin planning for this year's event.
Well, we already have it scheduled on our Mountain Watch calendar for April 21st because we partner with the Habitat Restoration Day for Earth Day. And I think I know it's hard because we've moved from like 9 o'clock to 10 o'clock, 10 to 1, but if we made it firmly starting at 9 or even, God forbid, 8:30, 9 o'clock, and we really
Till
wrap
noon.
at noon, which is really when we've been done most days.
Pretty much.
Is at
Yeah.
noon, because by then everybody's beat, and then people can,
Go over.
absolutely, it's not a conflict to go to the other thing. But I do think that it has more impact being on Earth Day. Well, we're not going to do it Sunday. So
Earth Day
on the
weekend.
21st, yeah. And, you know, I know that Mountain Watch has already scheduled that, and we've scheduled that, so.
Yeah, well, that was the specific question.
Yeah.
Because it seemed like a cool event when it's already been in the Star too, so we would have to re-notify, but
Right.
it did seem like an interesting event. We didn't just want to gloss it over in case.
No, it
I-
sounds like a
yeah.
great event. People
Yeah.
should, maybe we could even provide a shuttle straight from Habitat Restoration to South San Francisco Scavengers.
I'll take my electric
Unlikely
car.
that people would go to both. I mean, if you get out there and restore habitat, you're usually pretty fried afterwards.
That's true. But
Well, I don't see why we can't promote them both. People can pick one or the other.
Or
Yeah.
both.
And so we didn't know if that was like negative, because then we might lose people that would do habitat restoration to do that, but
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
Not many, if any. Fine.
okay. Just want to make sure.
Yeah. No, the South City Scavenger has been good to us, so I think we should,
Yeah.
we should give a shout out to their event as well as ours.
Yeah, some people might want to pull weeds, and some people might want to go see garbage being squished. You just don't know.
Put it out
do
there, your
both.
choice.
Hey, I learned a lot. Karen and I went, I know what goes on now. Yeah. I know that anything that comes on an international flight gets incinerated. Right? Right. Yep. No
Sure.
recycling of that stuff.
Okay, so are we good with that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I believe so. We'll go ahead and get started scheduling a committee meeting for that group to plan.
Okay. Boy, that is a big list of subcommittees.
And as you say that, I'd like to share a potential proposal for some reorganization of subcommittees. So in looking at this list, I had the same response. That's a really big list. How many of these are active? Which are still relevant to the projects that the larger committee is focused on? So I'm going to go ahead and show you some of my suggestions. These are just straw man for consideration. Nothing is decided. Up to you to decide. And of course, some of the people on these committees may change as new committee members come on in the next month or so. But
Relief.
here's a kind of potential proposal for you that hopefully would consolidate some similar kinds of groups. I think the education and outreach was one for me that seemed really ripe for combining. When I'm thinking about education and outreach, I really think of the library shelf and the sustainability webpage as being core components of our outreach and education strategy. So they probably should be coordinated within that larger strategy. So would like to hear some thoughts and any kind of changes or other suggestions I might have missed.
My first question is are all the subcommittees that were on the previous list accounted for on this list in some way or form?
I did not remove any
Okay.
of them.
I didn't think so, but I just,
Although
rather than sat
you'll
there
notice
trying
I
to
do
figure.
suggest that we remove the Parkside Plan representative because that plan has been approved. It's no longer relevant, I believe.
Okay.
Which one?
Down there at the
Parkside.
bottom of the left
Left.
column, remove no longer needed.
right.
I can't believe you'd fire me.
Oh, you're not fired, Kima. We're redeploying you.
So I like your proposed reorganization, but there are several other subcommittees that I think we still need. Barbara and I walked together down here. We're talking about the festival tree, which is now in even worse condition than it was before.
They haven't even finished taking the ornaments off of it.
So it got heavily pruned last year, and then some of the topmost branches died apparently right after
No,
they put the.
they did not die. He put them up on purpose to make it look more like a Christmas tree. Those were not dead bushes. He put them up. He put live bushes in and tied them so that it would be more full.
So they're
Oh,
kind of
for
like
heaven's
hair
sake.
extensions.
They were not killed.
Our tree had hair extensions.
They
Oh my
had hair
God.
extensions. Our tree had extensions, just so you know.
Well, thank you for clearing that up.
They were not killed.
Oh, that poor
You
tree.
didn't spray paint them though.
He didn't. He put live ones up there. They just
And then they
you know,
turned
they
dead
turned dead
because
because they weren't
If you're going to
attached.
put up dead things, you have to spray paint them so they look alive.
Well, he's
But
going to
it
take them
did.
down when he takes down the bulb.
Well, the
Yeah.
dead branches are gone because people, I guess, were horrified by that, or they fell out.
That's
I don't
so
know.
funny. It actually
level
worked really
of-
well, though. I mean, I thought it was a great.
The level of public outrage about the festival tree is really building. I've been hearing about it, so we need to
really
do
need to
something
get on
about
that.
that poor tree.
We've got to plant a new tree
Yeah.
as soon as possible.
So,
So you'll notice that the ones on the right column are ones that I am simply less familiar with, and as
Right.
far as I
Now
know,
you know.
they haven't been active at least in the last couple of months. So if they
Yes.
are still ones that need to continue, they should, and they all seemed probably like standalone committees from the other ones that I thought seemed like they could be consolidated. With Michael no longer on the committee, that only leaves Megan on that
I'll go with
subcommittee,
Megan
though.
on the festival tree replacement. committee.
So I really like the reorganization saying that as an outgoing member.
You wait, what do you mean?
I'm done soon.
You're not reapplying. Okay.
Oh, Kima,
I'm
I'm
sad.
under
but-
strict orders to maintain my civic responsibility in one focus area of my life, and
we'll fill out the application for you. We have 25 minutes.
yeah, no, I have to prioritize my commitment to the school board that I'm on. So, that being said, I think that the other ones, if we were going to keep them, they could actually be integrated with these other ones as well. So, like,
Yeah.
in my mind, Open Space Committee could also take invasive species ordinance and lighting ordinance, because those are both issues around open space.
Yeah.
The events could absorb the festival tree
Yep.
and the science fair judging, and then maybe the PCA could go into open space also. That's just my ideas. Oh, and waste stream maybe to education and outreach. But again, as an outgoing member,
Yeah, I just feel like then we've got more people in a meeting and we get less done. I'd rather keep it fractured, but if everybody else is, I don't feel strongly about that, so if everybody else is for combining them, go ahead.
I think the lighting ordinance maybe should go to the Climate Action Plan Subcommittee.
Yep.
Instead of open space. The invasive species ordinance, I think, is really important.
Yeah, I-
That's going to take quite a lot of work. That may need to stay as
Stay.
a standalone.
Yeah.
The one that has 4 members will have to be 3, and
Which one
potentially
is-
that'll resolve itself, but
Yeah.
The out,
it's a full committee meeting
education
of
outreach.
4.
That'll just be, I'll be the only one added,
Mm-hmm.
most likely.
And then, yeah, waste stream, what are we, is that something that was, I mean, because these have been around for a while, even before I was staff, so does that have a function that's separate from
Waste stream?
education and outreach, or is it, can we?
I don't
really
even
is.
remember
I don't
what
even
the
remember what we were
function of
trying to
that
accomplish with
subcommittee
that.
was.
What, Michelle knows, because she's the one that's on it.
Yeah.
Well,
Tell us.
my idea was how we could, really improve our waste stream and clean it, I mean, really work that as a separate item from education and outreach. I mean, it's kind of part of education and outreach, but part of the waste stream is really working to get businesses recycling properly, to get the people in town working to recycle properly, to have special days where we collect things like fabric, or, just the things that we've been talking about. And a lot of these things were put on hold because we didn't have Adrian. Remember, you kept saying, was when we get a person, when we get a person, when we get a person. We have a person.
So we want to keep waste stream.
It could go into education and outreach, but I really think it's kind of then education and outreach becomes so massive that it's hard to chew.
good thing you have 4 people on it.
Can't have 4 people.
Can't have 4.
Three,
It's a majority.
three.
That's a meeting.
Okay.
We'll have 3 people.
I'll be
Right.
3.
I'd also want to suggest that we relook at who's on them when we get new committee members.
Sure,
Yeah.
absolutely. That I'm 100% in favor of.
Yeah.
Okay. And we keep it at the number that it needs to be.
Right.
All right.
Okay.
Good work.
So we're keeping waste stream, PCA grant application. What are we doing with that one?
That the PCA grant application stuff really has to do with, it's not, it has to do with it has to do with open space, but it also has to do with, being able to get money for trails and different things like that.
Right, it can be recreation too.
It's recreation. There's a lot that goes on with the PCA grant. And are we doing anything with it right now?
Well, we're waiting to see that ABAG is releasing a grant cycle, and then we should meet. So it makes sense that it's kind of an ad hoc. It's not going to have to meet regularly, but
Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll keep that one as an ad hoc. Littman Science Fair we're keeping as an ad hoc, right? Are we
Yeah,
going out for
so.
education outreach? Because it's not really,
yeah, it's its own thing.
yeah.
It takes someone kind of doing some extra
Lighting's
Lift.
gone, ordinance went over, and then the trees. So I think there's just those three, right, that we're keeping us separate.
Invasive species went to where?
No, I think invasive species ought to stay. as a
Standalone,
Standalone.
yeah, that's
Standalone.
going to be a
Okay,
massive
okay.
undertaking.
And then festival tree replacement is just, that could still stand alone while we get it done. We just get it done, Megan.
I'm good with that.
Okay. We could both take a weekday field trip now.
Now we can.
Let's do it.
So I'd like to make sure I have all of the changes correct. We're going to keep the festival tree replacement as an ad hoc, and Michelle is going to join that committee. The invasive species ordinance will stay as a standalone. The lighting ordinance will be added to the CAP subcommittee. Littman Science Fair and PCA grant will both remain standalone ad hoc committees, as will waste stream.
Well, for right now, you could put waste stream under education and outreach till we have it better defined, and then break it out when we have actual tasks, unless you want to keep it separate.
No, I think it should go with education and outreach.
too.
And I think Scavenger is going to do some outreach to
Yeah,
businesses.
They are.
Yeah, I think I read that in their latest mailing. So I don't think
I think I brought it up too a couple meetings ago when I talked with Teresa.
yeah. So I think we can fold that into
Education outreach.
for now. And if we need to break it out again for some specific reason, we can do that.
Yeah.
Is everybody okay with this?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the thing about
Meh.
waste stream, it goes in both
Yeah.
education and then also in policy, like what the city determines is what we're going to do about our waste stream and our two providers for, that type of thing. So there's multiple components to that one. It's
Yeah.
a complex issue.
It is, and there's a lot that can be done in that area, so.
It's one of the most.
But it is education now. It's either which way.
Yeah.
No matter what it is, it still is.
Yeah, it is.
Outreach.
It's still,
A big component of it is, yeah.
Yeah.
The component we can most likely influence at this point.
Okay.
Great. Now with that, do we have any subcommittee updates?
I know the CAP met.
The CAP met.
Yep. We chewed on the BESO a little bit more. It's just turning into kind of a massive undertaking of its own. There's so many different ways we could start from and so many things we need to sort of break down and chew off. We haven't made a whole lot of progress, I'm afraid, on that.
Well, I don't know. I'd kind of disagree with that. We've looked at Berkeley's ordinance kind of as a model, and the more we look at it, the more we find things that we think should be strengthened or things that aren't clear, and that kind of makes sense because it was a new thing.
Yeah, that's true.
So we've gone through it at length, and we know we need to talk again to Lisa Ponacorvo, who's with
Stop waste.
Stop Waste. And we also decided we would look at some other cities' BESO ordinances to see if we could get ideas from those. So as Barbara said, it really is a fairly big undertaking. I think we thought, at least I'd thought,
Me too.
that
We're just
since
going to
other
take
other
Berkeley's thing
cities
and put a stamp on it and call it Brisbane and.
that since other cities had these, that we could pretty much, that a lot of the work would be done for us, but it's not proving to be that simple. And
Darn.
we'd rather have a good ordinance.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good
Than
place
not.
to start and get some
Yeah.
verbiage and things like that, but we're just a different city.
Yeah.
Well, and it's that these ordinances are pretty new, and there are obviously now a lot of things that we're realizing that they probably didn't think of before they wrote the ordinance.
Right.
So ours might be an improvement on what exists. That's what we
Cool.
hope. So we're working away at it.
Yeah. We found out that exactly 2 people used the coupons that we offered for the.
Were you one of them?
Yes, my husband was one of them.
I love that.
That was very disappointing. I would still like to try again. I'm not sure that I should be expect a different result, but I still want to give it another go someday and maybe just push a little bit harder. I had like visions of, I did push it, but I didn't push it as hard as I could have because I had visions of like the doors being beaten down and
This is the coupon for the,
the
Toolkit.
toolbox, the energy improvement home stuff.
So they could
Is-
buy the stuff that's in there for a discount.
Yeah, yeah. So maybe we just need to do it again and be braver and see what happens.
Maybe we could send you out with the coupons to show people how to.
Yeah, I'll go to door, like, use your coupon, your grandma kill you.
I think that sounds like a video blog.
Could be, could be.
do that again? No.
No.
Oh, we've been off the air for the last 5 minutes. That was 34 minutes ago. You guys
Also
fixed
got
that?
the notice and we got it back.
Oh, okay.
Okay. What else? Oh, we haven't done the purchasing. We've kind of dabbled around with the purchasing guide, but I'm asking staff to do a little bit of research so that we can target our first efforts appropriately. And I think staff will have that for us next time. And what else did we work on, Glenn?
I think we talked about doing another survey, didn't we?
You know what?
What?
Can I ask a question while Michael's here?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
He turns around.
What, Michael?
Lighting ordinance. That's been on our agenda for a really long time.
Yes.
What do you mean?
That was on hold until.
Right, but we have our lawyer here. He's very knowledgeable, and we should take advantage because he might give us good direction on how to achieve what we want with this. And I know it's kind of off the cuff, but what we really want is there's way too much
Nightlight.
nightlight, in particular in Crocker Industrial Park and our own ball field up there at Mission Blue. And I'm sure there's going to be a lot more at the marina with the beginning of the construction of the next phase. And so I'm wondering how we should go about instituting a lighting ordinance that meets our needs for a darker sky and better control of lighting without too much infringement on the people who feel like they have to light it up like daylight because somebody might walk in their parking lot
And trip.
or something, or they, they're worried about security,
Yeah.
et cetera. So,
Well, obviously, prospective is easier to deal with than the, retrofitting. But certainly, I mean, I'm aware that, communities have established certain, I'll call it thresholds for lack of a better word, so that when new development comes in, there is some regulation in place that provides ample lighting to provide a reasonable level of, security, et cetera, but doesn't necessarily go over the top. So I know there are regulations and cities have adopted those kinds of standards. You sometimes can get pushback from the companies who want higher amount, but pardon me, those regulations can be adopted.
We do have
So-
some of them.
I sent the staff a sample ordinance from the Dark Skies Association. This was quite a long time ago.
Okay.
I don't know if you need to take a look at it or not, maybe.
Yeah, I haven't seen that particular ordinance. Like I said, I know I have seen conditions of approval that other cities have imposed that, that set certain standards. And I don't know how those relate necessarily to the dark sky ordinance, but I certainly will work with Adrian to come up with something for this committee to look at.
That would be good. There's one other thing too, and this isn't just a new development issue. This is an issue that actually seems to be getting worse. I've noticed coming along Valley Drive at night, there's a lot of really bright new lighting that hits you right in the eyes. I think it's probably because LEDs are now really cheap, and so people are deciding that they're going to light up not only their parking lots, but the sky. So some of this just has to do with how the lighting is aimed. It's not just the amount, but it's whether it's shielded or not. So I wouldn't want an ordinance just to affect new development because we're
Yeah.
seeing quite a lot of retrofitting going on that is really increasing the amount of light that our community emits upward.
So,
Sorry, I would also amend that by saying that, you know, we have to have it apply to residences too, because
Yeah.
yeah.
there's some people who just put on floodlights around their house with no respect for their neighbors or the wildlife or anything.
And there's one
We
other.
were talking about doing a star article.
There was another area of light pollution that really I noticed this morning, and that's down at the marina. The Dakin building is lit up at 5 in the morning. You know, it was lit up all. It's lit up all the time now, even when people aren't there, and so we kind of need to curtail, you know, the amount of, I don't know if we can or not, interior lighting that gets exposed, because it really, I noticed it because it really affected the pictures I was taking because it was right there. I'm like, wow, that's a lot of light coming out of that building when it's 5 in the morning. So so we have outdoor lighting in industrial areas, outdoor lighting in residential areas, and then we have interior lighting that gets exposed to the outdoors in industrial areas. And I don't think we can really do much about interior lighting in residential areas.
I was just reading the other day, the switch to outdoor LED lighting has completely backfired. New research shows that solid-state solutions hasn't yielded expected energy savings and potentially worse has resulted in more light pollution than ever before.
Yeah.
It's a rebound
kidding.
effect.
Part of
It's
it's,
cheaper, so you use more.
well, and part of it's also they're brighter. So if you got a 75 watt, you get a 75 watt and it's like 150 and you're like, oh,
Yeah.
and it's so scary. I had to take some back from my house and they don't even make them smaller. I couldn't even find them. But-
Commercially, there's a recommended, like for a street light,
Yeah.
that's 150 watts, we were putting in
Our streetlights
60 or
are
40.
way too bright.
But they are interesting. Have you noticed that if you put them in your own home and you put an LED light in, if I put a 65 in, it's like 8 times that. And there's the little number that says it's 800 times. Because
Right,
I
so
was
you
like,
probably
why?
only
And
10.
I couldn't figure out. Nobody knew. In fact, none of the employees knew over at Lowe's, but somebody that was standing next to me actually lived in Brisbane knew. He's like, oh, no, this is the number and this is why. And I'm like, well, can I get them? And they didn't have them smaller. So I didn't buy them, and now I have a big black hole in my kitchen. But so anyway, but they are bright.
So if you could look at the sample ordinance, that would be great.
That would be great.
And maybe we can tailor all three.
Yeah.
You know,
I think
three.
the subcommittee's going to work on that, and then OSEC's going to recommend it, and at some point down the road, we'll have Michael look at it, but
Okay.
he's not going to
Okay.
Okay.
help us in the early draft phase.
I just didn't know if you had any experience of what we could do and couldn't do.
I'm sorry, I don't. Like I said, I've seen certain thresholds with respect to conditions of approval, but not an actual ordinance itself. So I'd be interested to take a look at it, sure.
Okay.
Be cool.
Thank you.
Awesome. Good job, Michelle.
I just was thinking, like, oh yeah, it's been bugging me for years.
Yeah, me too. I'd like to have some night sky. Every time I go out camping, I'm so blessed.
Yeah.
Sounds like we're ready to move on to calendar items.
Yeah, can I back up just a little bit, or maybe it comes under calendar items. Under Earth Month outreach events, we had this big page, but we only had that one issue. Are we going to have any other Earth Day events or Earth Month, or happy, like things that we're going to do for April? I assume it is April?
Yeah.
Yes.
Maybe the events committee could propose some?
Yeah, the banners, we'll put the banners back up.
Banners would be good.
Yeah.
That's one thing.
And then anything else that we're,
What have we ever
I don't
done?
know, I don't think we've ever done much else, and it seems, I'd be curious to hear what you guys say, how much time was involved for the planting, because the rec department wasn't able to help on that day, and you guys have spent a bit of time planning that new event, right?
The planting event?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's, it's a new thing for me and largely for Bob as well. And so Parks and Rec has been able to give some advice, but they're not going to be able to be there. So it's, it's taken some time,
Yeah.
certainly.
Planting. It's their stuff. You gotta organize.
Yeah.
I think, depending on how much the education and outreach subcommittee can get done, that, maybe we'll have found out some citizen science initiative by then that we, want to kind of roll out that month, run a star article on it.
That's a good idea.
So we'll try to do that.
Okay.
So you ready to move on?
Yep.
Yeah. I just wanted to make sure we did something more for that.
Okay, yeah.
So calendar items, again, this is a slightly different format than you're used to for some of our internal kind of planning purposes. You'll see a couple new columns, but there are a few things here that you can see we are in January and have the city attorney with us, and we are planning some of these events currently, and some of these things will be rolling into February, obviously, since that's tomorrow. But give you a sense of what's on tap for the year.
We're setting up to have the council liaisons come to the full committee meeting I am planning for in March, so we can talk next month about overall goals and what we want to ask of them.
Sounds good. Oh, one question about the letter to nurseries regarding the sale of invasive plants. Do I need to draft that?
I think Bob is going to draft that.
Yeah, I think that was going to be a
Yay.
wonderful thing
Okay.
staff was going to do for
Well, we talked about it last year, and then we looked for the past letter, and we never found it, and it appeared on the calendar to happen early in the year, so.
Okay.
I thought we found a copy of it.
no.
No, we never did.
I've been doing some research on other jurisdictions and looking it up, and so I don't have the letter drafted yet, but
Okay.
Okay.
next month.
Did you find some from other locations?
Yeah, and I was looking. There's a whole lot of you get into California noxious weeds, and then the state recommended plant. So I'm just trying to kind of get a idea of what other people have done, and so.
Okay.
But yeah, there are some other. There's definitely a good handful of other areas.
Awesome.
Did we send one before?
Yes, we did. I was pretty new on the committee and I drafted the letter,
Was
but
I on the committee?
no.
Okay.
Mm-mm.
I don't have it in my binder.
It's also informing Bob's background work for the invasive species ordinance.
Yay.
Yay. Thanks, Bob.
Oh, maybe we should talk a little in advance about Bike to Work Days, since that'll be coming up next month. Oh, wait, no, Earth
May.
Days. Never mind.
May.
Yep, May,
Work
you're
days
right.
in May.
We're a little early on that.
Okay. So maybe one thing that would help is days that we have actual events planned to put the actual date on the calendar too.
I can certainly do that.
That'd be great.
Thank you.
That way it won't slip by. And are we, I guess when are we going to decide where our sites are for Habitat Restoration Day and the second Habitat Restoration Day?
I will get us started on scheduling a meeting with the Parks and Rec folks, and we will decide that with that subcommittee, is my understanding.
Yeah. And can you invite Ariel from Mountain Watch to that as well, since they participate? Sure. Okay. Is that appropriate to have them? They've been a partner in this all along.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's played a significant role in the event, so.
Yeah.
it's
Okay.
fine, yeah.
Chair and committee member matters?
This is sort of a catch-all for anything else.
I thought you would want to ask about the big oil litigation while we still have the city attorney with us.
Sure. Okay, so Adrian, did you get in on the webinar from Union of Concerned Scientists?
I did.
Yeah, I did too. For the rest of the committee's information, several cities have filed suit against the oil companies themselves directly on the grounds that the oil companies have misled the public, have obstructed climate action, and their product is causing a lot of damage. And anticipated expense for cities like San Francisco is going to have to build a new seawall, and the estimate I remember hearing for that is something like $5 billion.
Wow.
Oakland is facing the same thing, and actually the IPCC has revised upward
Wow.
their sort of medium sea level rise estimate to 6 feet. And a lot of people think it could be more than that. So we're talking about large scale flooding in the Bay Area and
my
elsewhere. So there are these lawsuits. Exxon has threatened countersuit. They haven't actually filed it yet, as far as I know. But there was a webinar hosted by the Union of Concerned Scientists on, when was that? A few days ago.
Last Thursday, the 25th.
Last Thursday, and Adrian and I both watched it. It was very good. My takeaway from it was that cities really, well, I should back up and say that I already asked in December at the lunch whether Brisbane might consider signing on to this. And so Michael was aware of that request, and my impression from the webinar was that if cities want to do this, they actually need to come up with kind of their own damage estimate. Was that your impression also?
Yeah, more or less. I mean, it was a little, I think, fuzzy still to really, it seemed like most people were trying to avoid making any specific recommendations, as many are inclined to do when it comes to legal matters. But yeah, that was kind of my understanding.
Michael, have you had any opportunity to look into it further?
Just not to any great extent. I certainly contacted the County of San Mateo, is also one of the plaintiffs in it, and it would seem to me that that if the city were going to join in that, it would probably make sense to join in that effort, because I presume that the county has, the county residents and the city's interest in mind. We would need to explore whether or not there would be any cost involved to the city to, participate in some respect, as opposed to simply, being an intervener in the matter. And I don't have an answer to that. But if that's something that the committee, we're interested in having the city council pursue, I think Karen and I talked about perhaps that could be discussed at the liaison committee meeting, and get a sense from the committee members from the council if that's something that they would be interested in. And then based on that, we could move forward with looking into to see what, what the upside, the downside would be. As I understand the basis of the countersuit, for lack of a better word, from Exxon and maybe others, is that the claim that, well, cities or counties, if you knew about these things, you should have disclosed this in your bond documents. In other words, when a city or a county issues bonds, they have to put out a prospectus indicating both, what the downsides are, if there's any potential litigation or any problems. And my sense of it is most cities and counties have not identified those things in the prospectus. So, the companies are looking for just some ways to help deflect these kinds of lawsuits. But if that's something the committee's interested in, I think the liaison committee format would be a good place to sort of start that discussion with the council. And in the interim, I will find out more from San Mateo County, where things kind of stand procedurally, and what the cost might be for the city to participate.
Yeah, it seems like kind of a chicken and egg problem, because the council is probably going to want to know before they decide to pursue it, what are some of the upsides and downsides and costs. So are you just saying,
no,
just general interest? I mean,
well, I think there'll be interest on the part of the council generally before that liaison committee happens, which I think is going to be in March.
yeah.
I'll have that information available to this committee and to the liaison committee.
Okay, so we'll actually have
Yeah.
something to talk
Sure.
about.
Yeah, I don't want you to put you in a posture of kind of talking in a vacuum. You're going to need some specifics.
Okay, great, thank you. Any comments from the rest of the committee about that?
It's overwhelming to think of sea level rise at 6 feet.
Yeah.
Now, is that going to affect the marina at all? I mean, is that,
Oh, yeah.
that's what we're talking about right
It
now?
actually already is. There are times I've been out there when the sidewalk is overtopped with water, and, I don't know if that's king tides or sea level rise, but the thing is that, yeah, it is both. Even a few inches worth of sea level rise
Wow.
can really dramatically raise
Yeah.
the height of king tides or storm surges and like that. And by the way, the IPCC 6 feet estimate is in the conservative range. There are some that are much higher than that, depending on how fast Antarctica goes. And it's going.
Yeah,
Wow.
put it in perspective, a 6-foot sea level rise, the street out there would be water
Yeah.
here, right now.
Yeah.
The
so-
park would be, you think we have a problem with wet grass now?
Now we have a really good idea to have those
Yeah.
sea level things going. So
Yeah, it really would be very revealing to,
Sure would be.
Yeah, I think we
That's
really
great.
need
I
to
like that out.
pursue that poll idea and
Yeah.
figure out how to make it straightforward and simple,
yeah,
doable
yeah.
now.
Because current sea level, of course, on the pole, when you put it in the ground there, is going to be underground. But, so that it'd have to be like current sea level plus 3 feet, current sea level plus 4 feet, And that's easy to figure out if you have obviously we have to know how to do that because the dirt piles out there are based on, median tide sea level, height above.
There you go then.
So if we can have laws that say that, then we have to know how to figure that out.
So, Michael, I imagine that you probably have a pretty good idea of what the council would want to know before it.
They're going to want to know, if we have to file our own separate lawsuit, what it would cost to do that, what's going to be the involvement if that occurs, or whether or not if we can join, as it were, and just sort of ride the coattails of the county.
Okay.
It's a much different issue for the council, and if we have to file our own lawsuit and have, me or our firm, represent the city
Right.
in a very active fashion. So I'll run those details down so that the committee and the council is aware of that.
Okay, great. So that if we could just sign on, that probably wouldn't involve a whole lot, would it?
That would be my sense, is that if somehow we can be a named plaintiff, but not necessarily have to go to case management conferences and attend depositions and all that other kind of stuff, that's a whole different issue than if we suddenly have to be a player at the table all the time.
Okay, great. Yeah. Thank you.
Good. Glad you're here, Michael.
You can
Thanks, Karen, for reminding me about that. Any other questions about it?
I think we are on to staff updates. Karen, do you want to go first? You want me to go first?
Sure, I will. I just have a couple. I think you have more. And I don't know if I mentioned this before, when the Complete Streets Committee worked on a safe pedestrian route to school, we got that funded, but we went back and forth. We applied for a state grant. We applied for something else. We finally did get a county grant that combined the safe pedestrian routes to school with some green infrastructure improvements.
Yay.
So those are islands that make pedestrians have a shorter distance to travel across the street, and then they have vegetation in them to filter stormwater. So we're going to put some of those in at San Bruno and Santa Clara, at Visitation in Mariposa, and at Visitation in Alvarado. We had already had pedestrian improvements in the big kind of asphalt chevroned island. So now we're going to be able to put some greenery in there. That's what we're most excited about. So we got funding from the county at about, I think we had to put in about a 15% match.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Does this mean like at Visitation and Mariposa? That's where we are at right now. They already have those out into the street, right?
Yeah, so so the drainage doesn't go to all 8 legs of the intersection. So we're going to putting them in 2 or 3 locations there.
Okay.
So it'll look nicer.
Okay.
So, Karen, this is probably the wrong time to ask this, but it just popped into my head. South San Francisco has these things called Lime bikes, which are green and yellow bicycles that apparently people can just pick up and use. I saw somebody here in Brisbane riding one the other day, and I was just wondering if maybe we could check into getting a few of them parked here to see if people would use them.
Yeah, we can look. I don't know the details about who connected who with the bike
I
share
noticed
program
those
there,
too.
but we can check it out.
There's several down at the marina.
City of Alameda has a extensive Lime bike program as well that they've implemented, so you can check with them.
Okay.
Indeed.
Yeah, that's a good question. And also on Firth Canyon, well, I'll give that update. Bob and I and Kima hiked the Firth Canyon Trail, and it was one of the areas that's being considered for the funds from the sale of 280 South Hill to improve that trail and make it a legitimate trail. We found out that it does traverse 2 private properties at this time.
Oh.
So our first step is going to make contact with those property owners and see if they'd be interested in granting us an easement, or if not, perhaps a license agreement that could be revoked if needed to be in the future. But it's kind of, we want to take a small bite on that trail. It is used by people now, so it'd be better to legitimize it. But
Yeah.
you know, we might need trail standards to decide what improvements we need. Certainly, we looked at a couple of areas that are steep and could use, you know, maybe wooden actual steps. And if we did that, we might have a couple of trail signs out there. And so we want to use this example as a way to kind of legitimize one of these trails that's
Good.
Great.
Karen, where are the properties on the trail?
So as you go up from the canyon and you hit the fire road, there's one that's south. It's 1020 Humboldt, which
Right. So the one with the driveway. It's the
Yeah.
house that you can see the driveway there.
right, which as I understand, he used to be an OSEC member, so might be amenable to an easement. That's Sweeney's property.
Okay.
And
That's
then the
not Sean Sweeney, that's Shannon Sweeney,
oh, okay.
son
Oh, different Sweeney.
of
Okay.
Sean.
Oh, okay. And then the other one is next to Glen Park Tank, the one that's back.
The one that goes up past the water tanks.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Great.
And who does that property belong to?
I don't know exactly.
Okay.
It's coming down the road that it belongs to it, is that what it is? You're by the water tanks, and you come down, and then it comes straight down that road, is that it? Then you come to King?
Say that again?
And then you come to King, is that what you're
No.
talking?
No, this is by Glen Park Tank.
Oh, Glen Park Tank, sorry.
So it's like when you make that steep hairpin turn
Yep.
at the top of Glen Canyon
Yep.
where Humboldt starts. There's a driveway, one driveway that leads to the water
Gotcha.
tanks and one driveway that leads to a house. And you walk past that house when you go up the
Exactly.
upper part of Frith Canyon. Yeah.
And we did talk about if Kima didn't continue with the committee, that he would still maybe stay involved in that project since it's kind of a
I'd be happy.
passion of his.
Yeah, I'd be happy to.
And that's okay? Cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what the rules are.
I'll let Adrienne do, she has more updates.
Thanks, Karen.
Okay, so first update, we already kind of briefly mentioned the Habitat Planting Day this Saturday, so it sounds like we will see several of you there. Bob and I will both be there, obviously Ariel from Mountain Watch as well. We'd like to see if anybody on the committee would be willing to volunteer to help at a registration table, signing attendees in with the waivers.
Uh-huh.
Megan, fabulous, thank you very much.
What time do you want me there?
Probably just a little bit before 10. I don't think you need to be there too much before that. We'll be getting there around 9, I think, to set up, but
I'll get
No.
there like quarter
9,
to 10, 9:30,
yeah,
9:30,
that sounds
9
good.
something.
I'm sure that'll be plenty of time. So last week, Bob came down and we had a home audit at my home. We had a combo home energy score and advanced energy upgrade California audit. So that was very interesting. It was part of our kind of research into the building energy saving ordinance, and I have to say I thought it was really interesting and pretty fascinating. So I have just received my reports and need to schedule a follow-up call with the contractor. And there's a lot of moving parts, but I think we'll talk more in detail about that with the CAP subcommittee at our next meeting next week, I think. But wanted to let you all know that happened and was very interesting. So
Thanks so much for doing that. Were you able to film it at all? We talked about that a little
it
bit.
was almost 4 hours long.
Oh, my goodness.
So we did not film it.
Was
but we
it
have some
really?
great pictures. Actually, the contractor himself takes a lot of pictures.
Oh,
I
good.
took a couple extras of him kind of doing his work, but yeah, we have good pictures that he takes as part of the process. They are required to take them for some of the documentation and quality control on the part of the program administrators. So.
Great. So we have some visuals that we can use for, I don't know, the website or something. Yeah.
Yeah, the pictures of the blower door and infrared camera are probably most interesting and actually not applicable to the home energy score. But we may consider that. I'd be happy to share them with the subcommittee, and we can think about what we want to do with those.
Great.
We received news that we were awarded a San Mateo County Energy Efficiency Grant. This is something we applied for last month. So the primary focus of the grant is doing some early design work for pump upgrades at the Glen Park Station. So
Oh,
as
great.
that project was already in the city's plans, we are adding on a little bit of additional design work at the front end to make sure that we are doing everything we can to make that the most energy efficient system we can, and that will involve also coordinating with another program offered by PG&E called WISE. It's a Water Infrastructure System Efficiency. So we'll actually be doing some pump testing early next week on all of the city's pumps to kind of prepare for that kind of system-wide look by PG&E through the WISE program and the specific work on Glen Park Pump Station. So that was a $20,000 grant award.
Wow.
That's great.
Thank you.
There was a little side project tacked on that involved looking at some energy efficiency upgrades that were identified through some audits in 2014, and also working with Energy Watch to do an audit of the Mission Blue Center, which I understand didn't happen back in 2014. So those will happen as part of this grant project this calendar year.
Awesome.
Great.
Great. Thank you.
Well done.
Woohoo.
Very exciting.
Does the Mission Blue Center energy audit include the field and the tennis courts and stuff?
You know, we did not get into that specific of detail, so we'll have to talk with Energy Watch and see about what they can include.
It would be really good if it,
That'd be
included
excellent. That would just cover that little.
yeah.
So I sat in on a climate mayors webinar a few weeks back, and they were discussing a letter opposing repeal of the EPA Clean Power Plan. And so I'm happy to report that we sent that over to Mayor Conway, and he agreed to sign on. We did go ahead and sign on to that letter. And I believe the
Great.
comment deadline was extended, so I'm not sure. I haven't seen anything back from climate mayors about it actually being submitted. But they had quite a good, number of cities from all around the country, a couple hundred at least, that were also signing on. So glad to be part of that.
Adrian, do you know if the climate mayors are doing anything about, I haven't finished reading the paper yet, but I read elsewhere today that the budget in the Department of Energy for renewables has been slashed. The proposal is to slash it by something like 70%. So I was just wondering if the climate mayors are doing anything to sort of watchdog the budget in general and raise their objections to that sort of thing.
I am not aware, but I would be happy to check into it.
Okay. It's really, they're really just decimating or proposing to decimate the renewable energy programs.
Arg.
I will see if I can get any information on that. Let's see, further updates. You may be aware that we have the EV charging station. We are actually activating the station next week. We are planning a ribbon cutting for the morning of Valentine's Day. Show your love for electric vehicles.
That's
So we are planning to have the mayor there to speak, and we will have some coffee and donuts from Christie's Donut Holes. What's that?
Are you in the mic?
Am I? Are you hearing me through the mic?
Also for TV.
I've got too much technology surrounding me.
I had some questions about that. One of them had a black plastic bag taped over it the other day, so I didn't know why.
It is not activated yet, so it is not available to use. We wanted to
That would
make
be a good reason why.
make that clear.
And then there was some commentary that I saw on Facebook about it not being compatible with all electric cars.
So electric vehicle technology, as one would imagine with an emerging industry, is not entirely universal. This is a DC fast charger, which is the newest technology, the quick charging. Our station has two different connectors. One is called the Chatamo, and the other is called the Combo. So it has both of those connectors, and any car that has the capability to use DC fast charging can use this station. There are other cars that are not capable of charging at a DC fast charging station. Largely, those are the plug-in electric hybrids that have the gas backup engine. They don't have that capacity to charge at those speeds. So though there are some cars that will not be able to use it, but any car that has the ability to charge at a DC fast charger will be able to use it.
So at one point I asked you if it was, there was also going to be level 2 charging available, and I think I got a negative answer on that.
Yeah.
Is that true?
It's just fast charging.
It's only the level 3 charging. Yeah, that's what I thought, and I just wanted to double check my memory.
Right, and at this retail location, that was determined to be the right fit, because the level 2 charging takes quite a bit longer, and then someone kind of.
Yeah, I mean, I still disagree, but I was in the minority there, and I accept that.
How's this being publicized?
So we had articles that I wrote in the Star and Luminary, and we have an event that is the ribbon cutting event being promoted through the city's weekly email newsletters until it happens. I think it's already been in there twice. And so we will be doing some social media posts as well. And I have a couple of contacts that are apparently run or work with some EV networks that I'll be sending that to very soon.
Oh, very cool.
So, and we hope that you will all help to, promote the event to EV owners in the city that you know, or other environmental, other enthusiasts, so that we can get a good, turnout for the ribbon cutting, but more so good usage of the station, because that is required as part of the grant, that we get significant usage in the first few years of it being deployed.
We should definitely promote that with businesses in the industrial park.
That's what I was thinking too.
Yeah.
That's just ideal for people in the industrial park to use.
If anybody has other suggestions about the event, the ribbon cutting itself, or about long-term, promotion, I'd be happy to talk more about that.
So, were you able to track down any of those people we suggested with electric cars, or?
We actually just had a meeting yesterday to talk about the ribbon cutting, and so we discussed some folks who we thought we might ask to be our sample EV owner. And actually, Glenn, the fellow Luke, I will butcher his last name. He hasn't received an email from me yet, but we thought we might invite him, since he seemed very interested in it and noted that he has a Chevy Bolt.
Oh, absolutely. I just got another email from him, which I haven't sent with you. It turns out there's this little network of people that, and I don't even know how I got the first email or why, it just showed up. There is a little network of people in Brisbane that are interested in solar and electric vehicles and things like that. So we'll try to establish a liaison with them.
Yeah, Well, he actually showed up at City Hall yesterday to ask when the charger would be activated about an hour before our meeting. So
Oh,
I met him
fantastic.
and got a chance to talk with him for a couple of minutes. So I'll be following up with him very soon as well.
And is there a charge to charge?
It will be free for the first 45 minutes of a session. And so for most vehicles, that will be a significant enough for them to go to full charge or substantially there. That will be a 6-month pilot. So we really wanted to test it out and get a sense of how much usage we'll have and whether, you know, what that means financially for the city and whether we're getting the kind of turnover or having any issues with people being camped out there too long. After 45 minutes, there will be a $5 per hour fee. So we really are trying to incentivize people to come use it, but also to move on quickly. So that's kind of our strategy right now, but we're looking at it as a 6-month kind of pilot, if you will, to track how much usage we're getting and how that will impact us, and then we'll decide long-term where we go from there.
I wonder if we might consider some additional outreach to people in the industrial parks, because a lot of them don't live in Brisbane and they won't read the luminary. And unless unless management tells them, they may not know about it. So I'm not sure exactly how we would go about doing that, but maybe some posters or something. See if we could get permission to post information about it in the offices so that employees know that it's there.
And it will go on to the PlugShare and ChargePoint.
Okay, so
Some
most people
information.
probably have that if they have an electric car, is that right?
Yeah, if they're looking for a new place to charge. But the fact that ours is going to be free for 6 months, yeah, there might be other ways to get that word out. Well, the luminary, we would hope get to them too.
Yeah, I know, but if you don't live in Brisbane, you probably wouldn't get the luminary. That was my point.
Yeah, maybe only one is mailed to each business is what you're saying.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
they might
are
be not
sent there.
seeing it. How else have we ever communicated to the businesses?
Chamber.
Chamber?
Yeah, and we can ask Mitch, or our economic
That'd be great.
director, if there's
I think
a
that'd be good, the chamber then.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah,
we tried the note on the water bill, but it was so tiny.
yeah.
And again, that goes to maybe one person at a
Yeah.
business.
Let's see. Last week we had a tour of kindergartners come through City Hall, so I got to spend about 5 or so minutes from them out in the lobby right here, and we did a little recycling compost waste sorting game with them. I'm happy to report that the kindergartners are going to be excellent waste sorters. They did a really great job. It was a lot of fun. So that was kind of a nice little moment there last Friday. We are looking at an Office of Sustainability recycling grant. We are still determining whether that's a good fit for us, but it is really geared towards youth and education projects. So we did send that on to the schools, and hopefully they are taking a look at that, because there are some great opportunities with school gardens and field trips and things like that that are eligible for this grant that hopefully they'll take a look at and consider taking advantage of. We did have, I think you're all aware, we participated in the Sun Chairs program, so that has closed. I don't believe we had, we didn't have any contracts from Brisbane this year, but we will,
We got
program
several
will
last
continue.
year, so
So the program is going to continue year after year, is the understanding. They've already started to talk about next year, and so
Good.
we're on their list. We'll continue to participate in that, I assume. We have been added to the Peninsula Clean Energy Eco 100 directory. So if you actually go on Peninsula Clean Energy's website, there's a directory of all of the organizations that have opted up to Eco 100, and City of Brisbane is now on that list. And
That's something we should put on our sustainability website?
What's that?
Is that a link maybe we should put on the sustainability website?
You know, it probably is, and there are a number of changes that
Okay.
need to be made to that web page that I've noted.
Okay,
So
good.
I've made only very minor tweaks so far, but I think that's something that hopefully the Education and Outreach Committee can take a close look at and think about some of the updates or additions that we need to make there. And then the last thing, we had a couple of interesting presentations at the RICAPS group in the last couple of months. So in December, we learned that the consultants there have been able to get the that's the community inventory data from PG&E. So we are expecting to be able to get our 2015 greenhouse gas emissions inventory sometime early this year. Haven't seen it yet, but we are expecting it sometime soon. So that's good news that they were able to work that out. And then last week, they touched on refrigerants. And I know some of you are probably aware that that's a really big concern. And so they had some discussion about why it was a concern. And there are the Air Resources Board is looking at some potential regulations at the state level, and the RICAPS organizing team is looking into potential things that we could do at a city level. So they'll be, I think, bringing that back to the RICAPS group in coming months as they kind of do some further research on how we can address that problem.
Keep me abreast of that. I'm interested in the refrigerant issue. It's my pet issue for this year.
Was it specifically on refrigerants, or was it more broadly addressed to air conditioning and the fact that emissions from air conditioning, I think, are the fastest growing category of emissions, which is a little bit scary.
This was really specifically about the F gases, the fluorinated
Oh, okay.
gases.
Okay.
So, the refrigerants and
HFCs. Yeah.
right, the HFCs, all of those are really, they really seem to be focused on the refrigerants.
Okay.
Yeah, at least this particular
Got it. Okay.
regulation and presentation was focused around that. I think that does it.
And then I went up to Quarry Trail and identified some trees, and so we got a service request going for the dead trees you guys brought up on Quarry Trail. That there's a few of them there that needed to come be taken care of.
I just had one side question. And I'm sorry to drag this out, but I just keep forgetting to ask, and I can't wait another month. Is anything planned for the trail between Alvarado and San Benito, that footpath? Is that in anybody's plan, in any radar?
Is that the one in the alley?
Yeah,
Yeah.
the extension of the alley.
Yeah, we applied for a grant for that, and
Okay.
we didn't get it. But at this point now, we do have conceptual drawings, and I think we estimated it as costing $200,000. So
Yeah.
we're gonna, we want to put bollard
Yeah.
lighting. If you put a trail in, you want to put some light, and we want to use concrete and not wood so that it lasts.
Mm-hmm.
So we're ready for the next grant cycle that comes around.
Okay, because that's the one that always irks me, and I couldn't remember if it was anybody. And I knew it was people were aware of it. I just couldn't remember whose plan it was in or what. So
yeah,
thank you.
Yeah, council had brought it up and
Okay.
asked us to go for
Excellent.
grants.
Great.
Yeah.
That was it.
Okay.
That's all I have.
So have we gone to having our meetings now on the fourth Wednesday of the month?
That's what we did, if you remember, when Kima got on the school board. So, we
You-
can talk about.
Oh, sure.
You can
no.
change it back now.
Yeah, we could talk
Not
about
till
the third
after
Wednesday.
you're off, and you have a couple more months.
How many more months is my term?
As I read the rules, you have to stay until the new person is brought
Oh,
aboard.
Uh-oh, seriously? Are you lying?
By
No,
that time,
Yeah,
Why?
she's telling the absolute truth.
okay.
by that time, you'll remember how much you love the open space.
Oh, I
Yeah.
love it. No, I have no problems with it.
Okay.
That's so funny.
So 28th of February.
I don't know what the penalty is for your absence, though. Let me say, I just know that.
Okay.
okay.
You'll be penalized.
I'll take every meeting as a blessing.
Oh, listen to you.
So, how about when
So will
we get new membership? Do we want to revisit whether we meet on the fourth Wednesday or
Sure.
possibly?
Sure.
Yeah.
When we
I mean,
have
it
new
doesn't
people.
matter. It's-
Right now, it's the 28th. That's what we know.
It's possible that I won't be able to make it. Of course, I forgot to bring my calendar, but there's EPA is hosting a listening session on the Clean Power Plan, I believe, up in Sacramento, and I might go.
I think that's actually in San Francisco, yes?
Okay, maybe you're
The
right. If it's
Same
in
one
San
related to
Francisco.
that climate mayor's letter?
There's so much going on right now that I don't remember. I just remember the 28th. I have something on the 28th. But I'll just try to get back in time. If not, we have a capable vice chair, and I'll be late. Is there any other business?
Oh, I move we adjourn.
I'll second it.
Yay!
All in
Yay. Oh, I love the picture.
I know.
Clip
that
art
got
has some great stuff these days.
Our packet has been graphically enhanced.
That looks like a.
Now, I see a bottle of champagne here, so I want to know where my bottle of champagne is.
Well, that looks like an OSEC meeting at Brisbane Inn.